The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. Gotta eat to live, gotta grow to eat. Tell you about it when I got the time. Gotta stay one jump ahead of the nut sedge, one pull ahead of the weeds. Next time, I'm gonna cultivate more seeds. One jump ahead of the aphids, one step ahead of the birds. Wow, you know I love being a plant nerd. Hello there, everybody. Welcome one and all to the show, and I promise you, no more musicals. This is the Green Acres Garden Podcast, and thank you all for tuning in and being here. I am the Bard of Broccoli. I'm your host, Kevin Jordan, back in studio with my buddy on audio, Austin Blank, the ace of the sound waves. Austin, what's up, bud?
Hey, buddy. I am doing good. Good to be in the studio with you. And I didn't know you were a Disney fan.
I flew in on a magic carpet ride. We had a few sunny days, so I was out, flying around a little bit. Thought I'd come in here and record an episode.
I love it. Hey, Aladdin is always good with me.
Oh, yeah. In the garden, you get a little motivated. So
Yeah.
that's my garden song for the week. But you know what? We got something wonderful this week. We got an incredible episode, an amazing topic. We've got somebody who is a master rosarian, a champion rose grower, an extremely talented gardener, and an all-around awesome person who just has the habit of helping others learn how to cultivate and take care of their roses at a high level. We've got Charlotte Owendijk on the episode this week, and we'll be talking all things roses. Roses are to flowers as tomatoes are to the vegetable garden. They are just an elite level of plant that we grow. We love them for so many different reasons. They symbolize so much, love and peace, memory, friendship, and beyond. They bring us so much joy and beauty to our world. And this week, we're going to delve deep into them. Did you know, Austin, that there's each year 1.2 billion individual cut roses are sold every year?
Oh, my gosh.
And a little over 150 million rose plants are going to be purchased and planted by gardeners all around the world every year. It's pretty nuts. Actually, the American Rose Society has established a list of over 40 different rose types that they've classified, from old world roses, modern roses, hybrid teas, floribundas, English roses, climbing roses, grandifloras, shrub roses, miniature roses, carpet roses, and beyond. There's so much variety out there and so much to learn and enjoy, and I think Charlotte is going to be the perfect person to kind of stoke our passions and feed our knowledge of rose care and growing. I loved it. I had an amazing time with her, and I think people are really going to enjoy this week's episode.
Oh, totally. I totally agree. And, oh, man, I am feeling the love. I'm feeling the enthusiasm from you. So let's go ahead and jump straight into our interview. I want to introduce everyone to a good friend of the show. This is Charlotte Owendijk from Sierra Foothills Rose Society. And we met up with her at the Green Acres in Roseville. Let's go ahead and jump into our interview now. Here we go.
You love roses.
Yes, I've been accused of loving every rose I see.
So for those of us who don't know, Charlotte Owendijk, please can you tell us a little bit about your rose credentials, where your passion began and where it has led you?
I have 350 roses. I've been actively rose gardening for 30 plus years. You go in my garden, I love plants.
I've been to your garden. It's magnificent.
And so I do a lot of companion plantings. I've got fruit trees, I've got raised beds for my vegetables, a little bit of everything. But the roses, even in my front yard, which is basically drought tolerant, roses are what are the showboat plants because they bloom basically 9 months out of the year now.
I'm curious if you could give us a crash course in rose pruning. I know you are pretty swift at it now and talented at it to boot. So what are some of the things to look for? I know a lot of people, they move places where they didn't plant the rose, but now they've got this big, beautiful rose that's maybe hasn't been pruned for years. How do we bring those back to good health?
Okay, that's a big subject, and we've actually every year we do a winter pruning workshop, and that is usually the second Saturday in January, and we spend at least 2 solid hours talking about everything. And I have a pruning guide, and you can go to the Sierra Foothills Rose Society .org, and you can probably print that out, and you could, and it is 8 pages, and it talks about the basics, your basic tools, and how to how to prune the roses. You get rid of the dead, diseased, and really thin little things. And we talk about pruning from the bottom because it makes it simple. Don't just cut back a little 2 inches from the top each down. If you have a 6-foot tree, that's going to take you an afternoon to do.
Bottom up.
Bottom up. So you take a look at and you get rid of the oldest canes first. And how do you know what's the oldest cane? If it's gray. If you have brand new canes, they're usually nice and green. So when I go in and I look at it, I pick the oldest cane. That's usually, I reduce at least one of the canes that, let's say it's a hybrid tea and there's 5 or 6 canes. One of them's gray, that gray one's gonna go. And then hopefully next year, there'll be 1 or 2 more green canes that have taken the place of that, and the next oldest gray cane. So every year I get rid of the oldest cane. So I'm always rotating and keeping canes that are maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. So that way the newest canes have vigor. Sometimes when you have a garden that comes through, they just chop it off the top, and after a while you just have gray, gnarly canes. That's what you're probably seeing in some of these homes. And they don't produce as many beautiful flowers. The young Studley canes produce the most flowers.
Can you tell me, for those of us who maybe don't know, by cane you're talking about the main branches and stems that are formed?
Right, canes is the stems of a rose, and there'll be some thorns on that. And that's just terminology. Instead of using branches, we call them canes because we rotate. We don't keep the same. Like you have sometimes with a bush, you'll have a structure, and you wouldn't rotate and do what we do with a rose.
Well, I was really impressed when you schooled me up a year or 2 back when you had me in your garden for a hands-on lesson, which I think is the best way to learn, is just get out there and just do it. But I was really shocked in a way at how much you were willing to remove off of a plant. And I think a lot of people are a little bit hesitant sometimes to pull off some of that plant material because you feel as though it's like you're spending money, like you have less now, but it's okay to have less that rose.
Good point. That's a newbie almost always cringes. I remember the one time I went to a girlfriend in my house and she had beautiful roses. I said, we're going to top them off because they were very tall and it's hard to see what the very bottom if it's 6 or 8 feet tall. So I topped them up to about 3 to 4 feet tall. And then we started looking and she says, she had to walk away. She couldn't handle it.
Yeah. No, what are you doing? You're hurting it.
But, when you start, when someone has pruned the rose, where you do that and then remove some of the older canes, the next year, my roses never bloomed as good. Each year, what happens during the whole growing season, that rose bush puts all its sugar that it produces with the sunlight in its roots. And when you prune, you remove and get rid of some of the old canes, you remove all the leaves, and then when spring comes, it puts out all this new growth and new canes. We call that, when you have a new green cane that comes from the bud union or the base of the rose, we call that a basal break. Those are awesome ones. We're always looking, yay, our bush is doing good.
That's going to be a fresh, healthy cane.
Yes.
For years to come,
right,
you can enjoy it.
Right, exactly. And that's what we're looking for. And all that sugar, it's producing, you are putting more sunshine. If you have a bush that has a lot of canes, not very much sunshine is getting on that very base part of that rose. And the more sunshine, the more...
It'll encourage that.
Exactly.
Awesome. So maybe for a newbie, what does a finished pruned rose look like? When you're done, what's it going to look like?
Generally, it is between 2 and 3 feet tall. And... it depends on the age of the rose. If it's a new rose, it may only have 2 or 3 or 4 canes, 5 canes, but an older bush some of them, like a shrub rose, will have more canes. And you leave more of the bush there. Then I usually recommend you only take it down about 1/3 from the height it was at that time, 1/3 to 1/2. But a hybrid tea, it's usually 2 to 3 feet.
Well,
there's other things you've got to look for, because when you do a cut, you need to make sure that you don't leave any let's say you have some cane disease. It's called a canker. That's when you get a bacterial disease.
We had that on one of yours. It was black on the inside.
Right. When you cut a rose, you'll take a look at it, and there's like an outer ring. And that is called the phloem, and the center ring, which is called the xylem. The xylem is where the water comes up, and the phloem is where the sugar goes down to the roots. If the center portion of it, the xylem, is brown or black, you've got to go down. It has to be white. We try to encourage everyone to prune it by Valentine's Day, which is coming up.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
And some people only have 6 roses. We say if you go from the base, it should know. If you're a newbie, it may take you a half an hour to do a bush. If it's a very big bush, it may take you a little bit longer if you're a little reticent. But I tell you, even if you cut it down, it's okay. It's going to survive. When I was thinking I want to shovel prune a rose, I've trimmed it down to 6 inches or just left little nubs, and I was going to shovel prune it afterwards, and I forgot it. It
surprised you.
Better than that year, and I didn't shovel prune it.
Like, all right, you get to live now.
Now, if it didn't look very good, then for sure I'll shovel prune it. But if it comes back with a vengeance, I'm happy.
All right, Charlotte. Well, thanks for the pruning advice. Now I want to talk a little bit about planting. It's that time of year. I'm starting to notice them come into the nurseries a little bit. So what are your thoughts on selecting your roses? What are the best things? What considerations should we have? If someone's going in and they're like, I've got a spot, maybe I want to plant a rose here or there. What should they be thinking to get the best results?
Number one, you've got to have the right plant in the right spot. And roses because it takes a lot of energy, they need a lot of sun. And they need 6 to 8 hours of sun. You can have a little bit less if you have morning sun and then afternoon, and they get a break from the very midday sun. That's okay too. And if you really want it, we can talk about technical situations. I have some roses in semi-shady areas, but they're single roses. And most people have never seen a single rose. So that's always fun. But you have to have the right place. And
full blasting sun, hopefully.
Full sun. You've got to have appropriate no competition from tree roots. If you have that, roses don't like that because they're going to suck all the water and all the good stuff away from all the food. Prepare the soil. I hear you've got wonderful soil.
Decent soil in my front yard which is thankful. I'm thankful for that.
Well, I generally always top dress my roses every year, so that's my way of feeding them. And then when you're picking a rose, most people pick a rose because it has a memory, or you pick for color, you pick for fragrance, and that's appropriate. I suggest that you get a rose that's a newer rose, because the hybridizers have been working very hard to get more disease resistance in roses. The newer roses don't get as much black spot. They don't get powdery mildew here because we're fairly dry. So it's a better rose. It's an easier rose for you. And then take a look at and read the descriptions. If you have a lot of space, go ahead and get a shrub rose or a larger rose. But don't get a rose that's too big and try to put them in an area that's too small. That's it. And then pick whatever you want.
What are the type of roses where somebody just wants just big, just massive, showy blossoms?
Generally, those are found in the floribundas. You'll see that some hybrid trees. You'll see that kind of throughout. Some shrub roses. Some of the shrub roses are the Austin roses, and those have big, beautiful roses. I have Golden Celebration. That's usually about 3 to 4 feet wide. Yves Preget, which is a hybrid tea. That one, I've had blooms. When I was working, I take it into work, and people said, that's not a rose. We took my ruler out. It was 7 inches in diameter.
That's a massive blossom.
And it was so fragrant. My whole office just knocked yourself off.
Smelly in the best way. Now let's imagine that I've selected my plants, I'm ready to plant, I've got a nice location, blasting sun. Where do I go from there?
If you need to dig a decent hole, probably maybe about the larger, take a look at the most places you get, they're in a pot. At least about 6 to 8 inches wider than the pot and about 6 inches deeper than. If you have a hybrid tea or a rose that has been grafted where you have a bud union, it's kind of a knotted area of like a fist size at the base of the plant, you can keep that above the soil line. It might get lower and lower over time when you add more amendments, but start off a little bit higher, because if you were in the East Coast where it was freezing, you'd bury it.
Oh, to protect the roots?
Yeah, and for example, back east, you bury it 2 to 3 inches, 4 inches below the ground. Or sometimes in back east, they'll actually take the whole plant, lay it on its side, and cover it.
You mentioned that you feed your plants by giving them top dressing of like mulch or compost each year.
Yeah, and I also give them organic fertilizer.
I was just going to ask,
I'm not fussy.
When should we feed? Do you do it at planting? Should we wait until kind of they get going in spring?
Okay, after you prune existing rows, you would put organic fertilizer after you prune. I also like to top dress it with compost, even some mulch, because you need to keep the soil roots cool. We have such hot temperatures, and that makes a difference for the plant. It's like a little blanket. It holds the moisture in. The roots are cooler. The plants are happier. I usually order 5 yards of compost, and I put it around all my beds. And right now I'm top dressing just around each of my roses that I'm doing, because I'm just giving them a little extra TLC this year.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily.
I've seen some of your soil around your roses, and it's like you can kind of wiggle your hand down into it. It's pretty nice at this point.
I try. I have a lot of earthworms. They're doing a lot of work for me.
What does it look like to properly water a rose? I know because we get some scorching hot summers, but right now it's really nice. We got the rain and
Yeah, it's lovely. I love the rain. You need to we all have irrigation systems, and
don't rely on hand watering.
unless you're really religious. But no, I have drip irrigation around all my roses, because that way the water gets to the root ball. I personally, you can have emitters, but then I like to see several emitters around the plant.
Not just on one side of the root ball?
No, that doesn't work. So a minimum of 3 emitters. What I personally do is I do inline, and I do a coil around it, because I do so much companion planting. It's not just the roses that need the water, it's the companion plants that are with my roses. So if you go in my yard, you'll see the rose, but you'll see a lot of flowering plants, or Angelina sedum, which is a succulent that grows underneath. It's only about 3 to 4 inches tall, and that's my green mulch. Instead of putting mulch down,
but also shades and
it does.
Yes.
And it doesn't take very much water.
It looks nice.
I really like companion plants. It's because I want to attract beneficial insects all the time, because that way I have less problems with the aphids and things like that. So, and that's why I do all organics, because I want a healthy, sustainable garden. And that's the other thing. If you look at a rose bush, rosarians really like the idea of what the leaves look like. If you have a waxy coating on a leaf, or
it's a great indicator of how that plant's doing.
It's more resistant to all the insects puncturing it, and the fungal spores wash off or fall off. So you take a look at that, and we go, oh, that plant has good foliage.
Is that what excites you at all about rose growing at this point in your rose growing career? Like noticing all the different subtleties and the nuances. Like, hey, that variety does this. Like, whoa, that one's resilient.
Well, I'm looking at things that are more vigorous, that are easier to grow, because I like to recommend the roses that I think people are going to be successful for. So that's what I don't want to give you a fuss budget.
Do you have any just offhand?
I call my bulletproof roses.
Lay it on me. Fire away.
Okay, these are bulletproof roses. These are roses that I've grown or I've seen that have grown in the area. And they're more vigorous. They're more recent introductions. I've talked to a lot of rosarians. They're just great roses. There's one thing the American Rose Society does. The rosarians, we are asked to rate different roses. And we actually, American Rose Society sells a booklet. It's called Handbook for Selecting Roses. And they will rate roses from 0 to 8. And most of these roses are, 8 being the best. Most of these roses are in 7 and 8 category. And they're more recent roses. So the ones that you'll see is the iceberg roses, and awesome roses. It's not just white. They have pink ones, they have burgundy ones. Betty Boop, now that's one that has, maybe it's a semi-double, and I love the name. And it's red, but it ages out and it becomes more paler over time. Cherry Parfait is white with a red red on the edges. They're beautiful. No fragrance though, but it's gorgeous rose. I like Cinco de Mayo. I have 3 in the front, right by the sidewalk, and
it's like a scarlet red.
It's
or what is that?
A smoky orangey red. And it varies depending on what time of the season. It's like hot cocoa. Certain times it's more of a russet red, and then it becomes more of a lavender kind of red. So it varies depending on what the sign. And that just blooms and blooms and blooms. My favorite rose is Secret. I like it because it's a pretty soft pink, and it's kind of a creamy center, and it's extremely fragrant, and it just loves to bloom. That's my favorite. But there are some roses like the gold medal that you are going to be planting.
Yes.
I love both Secret and gold medal have lovely fragrances. But gold medal, there was a rose I got from my prom and one senior prom, and it looks just like Secret. So that's a kind of a sentimental type thing.
I love it.
Yeah. I like a lot of different roses. So Pope Joe Paul, that's an excellent, it's a beautiful white, creamy white.
It's right in the center of all of them. Kind of balance it all out.
And it's just a beautiful, fragrant rose, and it just pumps out the bloom, and it can handle our heat. Well, gardening is a form of Zen for me. And even if I didn't have roses, I have roses because I like the color, and I like the fact that I don't have to do that much work. And it gives me so much for 9 months of the year. I have annuals, I have perennials, but they require more work. Roses require less. So if you only have to have room for, let's say, 5 bushes, pick 5 beautiful roses that are fragrant. You can bring them in the house. Put them one in a bud vase. I always have one in a bud vase near my sink or by my bathroom sink, and that starts my day off right. It's a way of looking at the world.
I love it, and it's a beautiful way. And I want to thank you. Your passion and enthusiasm, I think it's infectious in the best way possible. There's other people I know because your work in your club with your friends and your colleagues around our own community. So hopefully these words reach an even bigger group of people, because I think your message is awesome, and what you've created with your passion is it's to be admired. And so I just thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, you're welcome, and it's been a pleasure.
All right, we are back from our interview with Charlotte. Thank you, Charlotte, for being on our show. And Kevin, I can tell you are excited because you're going to be growing some roses now, aren't you?
I am. I was so fired up to talk with Charlotte, the rose goddess. I've got a little plot.
Yeah.
Got 9 roses. I was telling her before we started, a few of the varieties. She's like, oh yeah, I like that one, telling me advice on how to take care of them. I'm fired up.
You're about to be just like a rose prince now.
So I'm going to be doing what she said. I'm trying to take care of them. I'm going to be adding some compost and some mulch, get that irrigation set up as soon as possible before that heat sets in. And I'm already looking forward to that first spring, flush and getting some blossoms brought inside, doing some of my summer deadheading to kind of clear out some of those old spent blossoms. after speaking with her and learning a little bit, I have no fears about it. I think it's going to be something that's very doable with a little bit of work. I'm going to get so much in return.
Yeah.
So I'm really,
I'm on
excited.
the same page. I've learned from doing the show how easy roses can be and how much joy it brings people. And it's just a really great thing. I didn't realize what a big world of, roses is out there. And it's nice to have that shown to me, how cool this subject is.
There's people all over the world speaking so many different languages than I could ever hope to even list off that also love flowers and roses. And I think one of the myths that Charlotte dispelled pretty easily is that they're not a very difficult plant. If you're in the right climate, in the right situation, which Zone 9 right here, we're very fortunate. If you're a listener and maybe you're outside that zone a little bit, I think there's hope for you, but you really have to just do your research and don't take it from us. You can go right to her website that she was promoting during our interview. And Austin, what's that?
So Charlotte shared with us some cool links from her website, and I'm going to put those in the episode description. So the first one is the Sierra Foothills Rose Society Rose Pruning Guide, and the second one is Charlotte's list of bulletproof roses.
Bulletproof roses. You got to love that. So don't just take our word for it. Go check it out. Do your research. I think once you start, dip your toe into that world of the rose growing, those petals will flow wildly, and you'll probably get just have a light little rose habit. Because I've got 9 put in, and then I ended. Now there's a few roses that I had in my mind that I wanted to get that I couldn't fit in. I'm like, maybe I'll got a couple more spots in the garden. I might sneak them in.
It's gonna grow and grow.
Yeah. So I'm fired up. I hope other people have enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thanks to our listeners for being here and tuning in. And until next week, garden friends, we got to get back to it. Go take care of my roses. Have a great week, everyone. Happy gardening to you all. And please,
never stop growing.